Hei, hjertelig velkommen tilbake til en ny episode hos Trøndelag Europakontors webinarserie. I dag så har vi med oss Lars Holte Nilsen. Hjertelig velkommen.
Nei, takk.
Lars, du er director på Central Denmark EU Office, eller Midtjylland, som vi sier i Norge. Og grunnen til at du er her i dag er for å fortelle oss litt nærmere om hva det vil si det at Danmark har et presidentskap i EU. Nå skulle vi veldig gjerne tatt samtalen vår på skandinavisk, norsk og dansk, men med hensyn til enkelte seere så har vi funnet ut at det kanskje er best å ta det videre på engelsk. Så Lars, very welcome to us.
Thank you very much. So I can start?
Yeah, you can absolutely start.
Okay, yeah, but thanks a lot for having me, and happy to speak a bit about the Danish EU presidency, which of course is a huge thing for the individual country having the presidency change every year. So it's a big machine where you have to take upon the role, you have to take it over from the previous president, and then to pass it on to the next. So what I was planning today was to talk about the EU presidency with in three aspects, or three roles, if you want. The presidency, where the role is chairperson. I will talk a bit about influence, how to gain influence via the EU presidency, and also how the presidency can be used to gain visibility. So that's the plan, and I guess you will just speak a bit, and you will interrupt me with whatever questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the privilege.
So, well, first of all, the presidency is about being the chair of the Council of the European Union. So, in a way, like being the chair, like in any other collaboration or any other association, where you are sitting at the end of the table, and where your most important role is to be the honest broker that can make the collaboration work.
And just to make this a bit easier to understand, how would you compare being chair of the council to a normal government? Is this being the leading party in the parliament, or is it being the head of government? How does it work in EU settings in
Europe? Yeah, it's more like being the chair in a parliament, because like in a national parliament, the Council of Europe also works with the majorities in most cases. Sometimes you need unanimity, but mostly you work with majorities. So in that sense, it looks a bit like being the head of a parliament, or the president of a parliament. But of course, the difference with the EU is you don't only have the council, you also have to take into account the commission, which is more like the government of a national administration, and you also have to take into account the European Parliament, being the parliament or the
whole legislature.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it is probably a role you don't see exactly the same way in other settings, but you can say the feature of the role being the honest broker, being the one who tried to get majorities or get agreement on some very complicated issue. Yeah, that's the same role as you may find in other settings. And probably also being the one who are relatively neutral in the discussion. So having an approach to this role, saying it's more important to have progress on the files, to find majorities, to find agreement, than it is to promote your own opinions. So that is probably the key to be successful in this role. And then, of course, what are the agenda? What are you discussing? And you, of course, you can go into a chairperson or a presidency role with your own very strict agenda. But the EU have an agenda already. You cannot, as a presidency, come in with your completely own agenda. First of all, you have the Commission work program, which is what you have to fulfill in a way. That's the proposals coming from the Commission you have to work with. And on the other hand, there's also always in European collaboration, there's always issues coming in that you didn't expect. So problems coming in unexpected that you have to deal with.
So the amount of initiative that Denmark has gained from this position, it's not unlimited.
No.
It comes with some restrictions or with guidelines from.
Definitely. I mean, we know the big issues of the EU right now. It's security, of course. It's competitiveness. It's enlargement. It's trade agreements.
Are you trying to steer the security towards securing Greenland?
Yeah, I think, of course, what Denmark is trying is to, and I think we also seen that where you had the prime minister, they visited Greenland during the beginning of the Danish presidency. So of course, Denmark would never say that we are using the presidency to gain specific security for Greenland, but of course they use the presidency to create awareness about the specific security situation in Greenland. So that's clear. So yeah, so as you said, I mean, a lot of the work is given. You have to work with the files that are kind of coming from the Commission or coming from the outside. But then, of course, you can also try to put your own agendas to squeeze that in or to emphasize your own policy in the work. Huh?
Does this mean like bringing forth entirely new perspectives, or is it more like Denmark can choose where it puts the pressure on different cases?
I think it can be both. I think you can maybe not completely new issues, but to some extent, I think you can put new issues in, and certainly you can put more or manipulate, or you can orchestra your own issues in a different way. But maybe I will come back a bit to that with the Danish priorities. So planning is a big thing of being the EU president. What they say in the Danish permanent representation, who is running the show here from Brussels, is that they have to be ahead of the table in 2,000 meetings here over the next half year. So that's meetings from everything from working group level, where civil servants from all the member states are discussing very specific issues, to meetings with ministers in the different council formations, and of course also meetings with the prime ministers that are scheduled to meet 2 times during the Danish presidency. So there's a lot of planning and a lot of preparation just to take this more formal role as a chairperson.
Yeah, so Norway just had quite recently we had the state visit from President Macron of France, because we were looking to buy some new warships, frigates. And so how does this situation, how attractive does Denmark become, like in diplomatic terms? Is there like a increased interest on like a bilateral level for Denmark now?
I don't think you should exaggerate that interest there, but obviously, I mean, in the presidency period, of course, you have greater access to the heads of government or the heads of states for the major EU countries, because you are the one who are organizing the agenda. You are the one who have to find the compromises. So you naturally will speak more to the heads of the big countries than you would normally do. I mean, when France or Germany, normally when they are looking to create a compromise, they wouldn't call Denmark as the first, but it's normal that Denmark called France to ask for their position and their approach to a specific issue. So in that sense, you have a bit more access. And that exactly is like it said here in the slide, finding compromise is probably the most important role as being the chairperson. So as I said before, not necessarily pursuing your own positions, but more pursuing to find a compromise among the members of the member countries of the EU and progress the files. And then, as I said, lastly, then you also have a very important role to be the main negotiator with the European Parliament. So everything in the EU almost is decided in collaboration with the European Parliament. So it's not enough that the member states agree. You also had to get agreement from the Parliament, and this process, the presidency also plays a very important role. So I wanted to move on a bit to maybe we talked already about it with influence. So how can you how can you then use this presidency role to gain power or to promote your own policy in a way? Yeah, as I said, maybe when you speak to the outside, you say in Denmark, and that's what they.
How honest is the broker?
Exactly, yeah. And what they would say if you talk to the Danish ambassador, he would say that during the presidency we don't have any Danish positions. But of course, in reality, they do. But you just have to be more careful how often you use or how often you put emphasis on your own national position, and how many specific interests you push into your role as a presidency, as a president. So I think what we have seen from Denmark so far is that it's relatively few agendas Denmark has put forward, but of course you have the possibility, because when you are the chairperson, you are setting the agenda of the meetings, and when you set the agenda, then of course you also have the power to prioritize the agenda. You also have the power to add new issues to agendas, or to promote some issues in the agenda. You have the possibility to allocate more time and more discussion to specific issues that are in your interest as the president. What you also can do is to decide the timing. So issues that may be difficult for you can degrade, so postpone the discussion on these issues, and issues that are very important to you can promote them so that they are discussed earlier and discussed more thoroughly than it would normally be. Then, of course, you can also, as I said before, you can promote specific issues that can be difficult. What we've seen with, to give an example, in Denmark, illegal immigration, that's an important issue for Denmark nationally, but it's difficult to do many things nationally. So Denmark is also for a long time tried to use the EU to, you can say, to set up a new framework for immigration in Europe that would also apply to Denmark. And what we have seen here during this presidency is that Denmark have made a coalition with Italy. So maybe it's not Denmark who are putting the issue forward, but more Italy that are doing it. And then Denmark is, taking the issue and putting it into the presidency agenda. So that's another way to do that. So yeah, so there are a number of ways where you can gain influence or get more power when you have the presidency. It's probably easier to use these instruments mentioned here when you're a big country. Of course, when you're a smaller country, you always have to be more careful to trying to hijack the collaboration.
I imagine, and if I can try and probe a bit about it, because in general, like the European Parliament and also the Commission is much more EU-based actors, in the sense that they're elected on more of on a European level, whereas when we're talking about the Council, it's more about local or national governments that are represented. So national interests clash with each other in a much bigger way. So I'm a bit curious when you're talking about this issue about migration and also working with Italy. How do Denmark set this? Like, how do they try and how do they operate as an honest broker? And what's the typical? Is there more problems during this presidency than the previous one in terms of finding an equilibrium? Are we seeing are there the same issues from presidency to presidency, that one country doesn't want to cooperate with the other one? Is this very hereditary, or is it totally dependent on what issue there is?
I think Denmark, together with other countries for a long time, have tried to mature this issue. Where if you go maybe 5 years back, then it would mostly be would mostly be countries like Italy and Spain and Greece, who are receiving a lot of immigrants over the Mediterranean who were discussing this issue in an EU context because they had an acute problem with a lot of people coming into their country. And their agenda was that there should be some kind of burden sharing. Since they were frontline from the immigration, they should kind of burden share with or the other countries should kind of share the burdens with these countries. And for that reason, nobody wanted to do that, of course.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it was not discussed a lot in an EU context because there was only a few countries who had this interest. The rest preferred to remain silent and not put this on the EU agenda.
Yeah.
But now, since the last 5 years, I think Denmark, along with other countries, have been working to look at the issue from another angle. So not only to handle the immigration that comes across the Mediterranean, but also work more structurally with immigration. And that you can maybe do in two ways. You can limit by making agreements with the countries where they come from, and you can work with the living conditions in the countries where immigration comes from. But you can also change the rules on how you handle immigration. So today, the rule is the country where they arrive in the EU, they are responsible for the immigrant and to make the case handling concerning asylum and so on. But what Denmark now is trying to discuss together with other countries is that maybe you can look at it in a different way. You can have some reception centers outside Europe where immigrants are coming first, and they are staying there until their application is treated. So that's another way to look at it, and it's not something you do from one day to the other, but that has been a process over a long time to put that aspect into the discussion. And of course, it also makes a huge difference that politics in Europe have changed that. So the member states have been moving to the right. So and especially on value politics and legal politics, many member states have moved to the right. So there's a generally more reluctant approach to immigration in the member states, and at the same time, the European Parliament, had also moved to the right, and the resistance in Parliament to discuss immigration and to be strict on immigration is less now than it was before. The election to the Parliament last year.
I actually have one follow-up question. It's a bit related, but I don't want to mess up your presentation, so you just skip it for now if it's. But you mentioned that there's not too many agendas that are set by Denmark in this presidency, and I'm very curious because now we just talked about like very big picture stuff like migration. So how are these Danish priorities set?
Yeah.
And what's the role of local governments?
Yeah, so I can show you a bit. So this is the official Danish priorities for this presidency, and as you can see, it's not a big surprise what they are. So they, to a large extent, they mirror the EU priorities for the moment.
Resilience and deterrence, very very popular stuff these days.
Exactly, and competitiveness as well. You can see where you have a clear Danish priority or fingerprint is on the green Europe. So a competitive and green Europe, where many countries probably say competitive is enough, and then green is less important there. But for Denmark, the green aspect is still very important, partly because in Denmark there's a quite broad acceptance of the problem with climate change. So for political reasons, it's important for Denmark to put this very much at the front. But also because Denmark has some quite big companies in green tech. So for that reason, kind of innovation and workplaces and growth in Denmark is closely linked to green tech, and we continue the
very understandable.
So that's relatively normal. And how are these priorities set? So they are set by the government and the parliament. So in Denmark we have a system where the government they They are running the foreign policy, including the EU policy. So that's the responsibility of the government. But the government need a mandate from the parliament. So that means the government have to go to the parliament to get a mandate for all EU issues. So every time they have to vote or have an opinion on a EU case, they need the mandate from the parliament.
And you're a lot of parties in Denmark, political parties.
We have a lot of parties in Denmark, yeah.
Like 25 or something, it feels like.
Not so much. Not so much. I think there's, for the moment in Parliament, I think there are 9 parties in Parliament for the moment.
This is pretty similar to our system.
I think it's not so.
But would you say that the government right now is a bit lucky then, because you don't have the presidency in the European Union? It doesn't come that often, so it's kind of winning the lottery for.
In terms of the issues,
in terms of like being able to like set the agenda for the EU presidency. Or would you say that these issues are more like stern in the sense that they're kind of set and it doesn't matter that much which part is?
I think there is traditionally there is a relatively big consensus about EU policy in the Danish Parliament. I think it's. Of course, there can be situations where there are different opinions in the parliament about certain EU issues, but I think you probably have a relatively large degree of consensus. And I think the Danish program here for the presidency, I think I was not in the room, of course, but I think there was probably a quite big agreement that this should be the priorities for Denmark. And you can also see how when you look at the issues there's it's also, of course, politically made in a way. So there's bits for everybody. So there are bits for the right-wing parties with the immigration we talked about before. There are bits to the more left-wing parties with the whole green agenda. There are bits to the right wing for defense and security. And there are bits to the left wing with you can say the whole tech and the protection of the internet protection from how do you say, social media and so on. So I think in that sense they tried also to balance it politically in Denmark. So the whole political spectrum have a bit in this strategy that they can agree to. And then you asked about the regions and the municipalities. I mean, of course, things like that is being put into a hearing for regions and municipalities, and other interests have a possibility to come with input and to also to influence to a certain degree. But I would say this is very much a paper that's decided in the government and the parliament.
Understandable.
So I move on a bit. So that's a bit. There was a Danish to talk about the last of my 3 aspects of the presidency, which is visibility, and that's maybe also where we as a regional representation here in Brussels, where we are coming mostly in place in relation to the presidency. So when a country have the presidency, then there's a specific attention to that country. You get, as it said here, you get a lot more focus, you get a much more visibility, and you have a platform for Danish priorities. We talked about priorities on national level, but also priorities on specific sector levels or regional level or local level, or priorities for universities, for instance, is something that you have bigger access to promote during the presidency. So there's one side, but there's also visibility on the other side. So a larger visibility in the presidency country on the EU and European collaboration. So that means if you want to talk about the benefits of EU, you want to talk about the benefits to working together cross-border, then you have a good moment in time to have this talk when you have the EU presidency, because people are listening more when EU is mentioned than they would normally do, because there's much more attention. It's being talked about in radio and TV. The politicians have a focus on EU, so it's more in the mind of a population, but also for companies and other actors in society.
Is there some sort of local debate amongst people and
Yes.
therapists about is there any way that Danish people are dissatisfied or trying to look at this through a problematic lens having the presidency?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think for the presidency, no, I don't think the presidency itself is not looked at reluctantly. I wouldn't say that. And I would say also now, I mean, Denmark historically, of course, have been a country that maybe have been perceived as EU critical in some aspects, and also there have been some referendums in Denmark in the past about treaty changes where the Danes they voted no, and we also have some exemptions for some policy areas in the EU. But right now, and that's been the case for the last 4, 5, 6 years, there's a very big support to the EU in Denmark. So when you make the surveys, it's a very little small part of the Danish population who are against EU.
Not to derail the conversation, but could you just sum up why Danes are positive to the EU in your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good question. How this change came about. I think that maybe Brexit played a big role. First of all, that this to have this to conceive it in the way that you can step out of the EU, so you can regain your independence and your self-determination, but you can still have all the benefits. So I think many people and also some political parties, they had that in the mind in the past. But I think the reality we've seen from Brexit is that this is not so easy. That you may gain your independence and your your ability to decide on your own, but it also comes at a very high price. So I think that was a big reason for the change. And then I think also there's probably a larger acceptance that some of the issues, the societal challenges that we face that influence the life of normal people, that people to a larger extent agree that this is very difficult for one small country to handle these issues themselves. And of course, the whole climate discussion that has been going on, especially for the last 10 years, of course, everybody accepts, okay, Denmark can do a lot of things as a country that may affect our local environment, but for the big issues, the global issues for climate change, we need to work together and we need to get agreement in a larger context. And I think many have been seeing EU was a place where you could get that. So probably many factors, but at least it has changed a lot over the last years.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
So as I said before, this visibility, we also use that on the local and regional level, where we try to use the presidency period to start some discussions on issues that are important to the actors in our region. So that can be in the local governments, it can be in our knowledge institutions, it can be things that are coming from companies, because there you have a window of opportunity to be heard, and also that those we are speaking for may allocate more resources to take the European discussions than they would normally do. So we have been doing activities, conferences, events of different kinds. I've written down some areas here. We have had focus actually last week on soil. So the soil mission, agriculture, everything with soil. We had a big conference in the context of the presidency at Aarhus University. We have been having events concerning simplification of Horizon Europe, so the big research and innovation program in EU. How can you change that to more approachable and a more simple program for the participants? we have used the presidency.
I'm a bit curious about that one, actually. Just sorry to interrupt, but Horizon Europe, for those who don't know, it's like the Champions League elite research program within the EU. Total funds is 100 billion euros. And what you're saying that you want to simplify it and make it more accessible. To whom?
I mean, we first of all to the traditional users of the program, which is universities and bigger, larger companies that have a possibility to access the program, but also in taking into account that there will be much more focus on implementation in the future. So not only creating knowledge, but also putting knowledge in play in society, and then that also means that we need to change the program in the way so other types of actors in society can participate in the projects. For instance, local governments, regional governments, smaller companies, interest groups, patient groups in health and so on. And in order for them to be able to participate, we need to simplify the program.
Can I ask a bit, because I think that Mid Norway and Midtjylland are comparable to some extent. Geographically, we're much bigger, but you have a bigger populace.
You're probably flatter.
Flatter as well, I'm sure. But it's Aarhus is in your region, right? So it's a university center. We have NTNU, biggest science university in Norway. So I'm guessing both NTNU and also SINTEF, which is located in our region, are excellent contenders in the Horizon program. And I'm sure Aarhus also has success there. But when we're talking about municipalities, what size are a common municipality in Denmark, and how are they faring in European programs?
I mean, the municipalities are small. It's Aarhus is our biggest city, so with 350,000 inhabitants, and Aarhus is participating in some Horizon projects, and many other municipalities are maybe around 100,000 inhabitants, and some smaller and some much smaller. So I would say it's not often that municipalities can participate in Horizon projects, but we think there is a scope for them to do so, especially if they work closely together with the universities in the region and develop the projects in cooperation.
Would you have like an estimate, or like what's the average size of a municipality in your region?
So the size goes from 350,000 to 3,500.
Okay, yeah.
So there's one island that is very small, but I would say the majority is between 80,000 inhabitants.
I'm asking because we had a report last year that came out where they have a revision about how has the EEA agreement that Norway is a part of, how has it fared, and the reason I'm asking is that we have to try and help our local government to utilize and to get more competences in order to partake. But I understand that our municipalities, some of them are much smaller than yours, maybe on average at least. So just interesting.
Yeah, so we had a reform in Denmark, like now, 10 years ago, where they merged municipalities into bigger units, and so they're now probably on average quite a bit bigger than in Norway, and that made a I mean, of course, when you are bigger, you have more resources, you have staff that are used to work strategically and more innovation based, and maybe also more experience to working with advanced projects, which EU projects are. Of course, it gives you a better basis to participate in EU projects. It doesn't have to be Horizon projects. It can be LIFE, it can be Erasmus, it can be in many other areas. But I think, I mean, in all, we have 19 municipalities that we work for, and they are all active in EU projects. So it's certainly possible. Also the smallest.
Very good.
Yeah. So just so that was my. I will finish up by saying that this was my pointer that you have a moment of opportunity to put focus on your priorities, your issues on the European level, but you also have a moment of possibility to discuss EU to an extent that is normally not possible when you don't have the EU presidency, and that's what we are trying to do when we table these issues that I gave some examples on.
So I thank you very much. I have some finishing questions. They're very difficult, so do your best. Now I'm curious about, because we looked a bit here earlier about the ambition set and also about how the government has set some guidelines to what you would like to accomplish. How do you think the presidency is faring so far? Do you think it's ambitious enough? Is it too ambitious? Like, how would you evaluate this chance that Denmark has in the?
I mean, I think
because you've been here for 25 years, you mentioned, so you've seen some presidencies come and go.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think what you can probably say about the Danish presidency is that it's very good or very well organized. So I guess this is a Northern European thing that we are very keen to plan. We are very well prepared. We know what we want. We know how we want to do it.
Maybe we are also good at compromising.
Maybe we are also maybe we are also good at compromising. Maybe we are maybe we are good at that. So I think in that sense, I think Denmark, they have the administrative capacity and the capability to run a good presidency, in the sense to promote the files and make sure everything is running according to plan, to have capable people who can have technical discussions among the member states to find compromises. So in that sense, and that's also what I hear so far, that works quite well, as I understand it. Then you can say, of course, as a small country, you don't have the big bargaining power to push compromises through. Maybe if you're a big country like Germany and France or Poland, Spain, and so on, maybe you have the issues that are really important when you have the presidency and you have responsibility for an issue. You can maybe push more than you can as a small country. So that probably in some cases can make it more difficult. Then of course you can say, when you are sometimes it's easier to be the small country that seeks a compromise than you're a big country who are pushing for a compromise. So I think it's difficult to evaluate, and it also depends a lot. Now we saw with the EU climate law that was kind of agreed here 2 weeks ago, where I mean, we got an agreement, but probably many would have liked it to be more ambitious. And then you can say, okay, is that the Danish presidency's fault? Probably not, because we are just in a moment of time where the whole green agenda is not so important politically as it was 2 years ago. So could you have done more? I don't know. Probably what the Danish negotiators would have said. I talked to some of them. They said, but we were really, I mean, we ran a really tight ship, and we knew how we wanted to negotiate, and we were able to bridge the gaps between the different countries. So we got some kind of agreement.
And I think in that issue as well, I think it's pretty clear that it could have gone very much to the other side as well. So it could have been much more reduced. In terms of climate goals, I would say they delivered. So my final question, it's a bit more about Norway, actually, because
we miss you in the EU.
You miss us. Yeah. Well, that's very nice to hear. Sometimes I meet people here and they are like confused when I have to explain that Norway is not a part of the EU, but a part of the EEA. So maybe they don't care about us as much when you're talking to Greece or Portuguese or something. But Yes, so Denmark misses us in the EU, and so my question is pretty simple. It's like, what are we missing out on? Why, in your terms, as in your view as a Dane and as the head of a regional office here, what are we missing in terms of visibility, in terms of policy making?
Yeah. I think you.
I don't want to ask a leading question. So if there's something that's negative, I would like to hear that as well.
I mean, you miss to be at the table. So I mean, in Norway, you apply most of the decisions that are taken in the EU, but you are not directly part of the negotiation, and you cannot influence in the same way. You are never the president. You don't have a European commissioner. You don't have members of the European Parliament. You don't participate in the council meetings. So that
you have a commissioner.
We have a commissioner.
Dan Jørgensen.
Yeah, exactly. For energy. So
housing.
So you have to apply, or you decide to apply most of the decisions in the EU, and that's also, you have to do that to be part of the free trade area of the EEA, but you don't have the same access to influence the decision and put a fingerprint on the decision. That's one thing, and then probably also, as you indicate, maybe also a consequence is that Norway is not taken into account in the same way as other countries. So Denmark is a small country, almost as small as Norway, but still we get some attention because we are part of the community, part of the European Union, and also when we work with Danish partners and we go into cooperations with partners from other countries, people are aware that we are part of the EU. And I think for Norway, that's probably not the case to the same extent. You are not taken into account the same way, even if you pay into many of the support programs and can be part of the project. I don't think you are top of mind the same way if you would have been a member state.
And furthermore, we're roughly about the same size population-wise, 5-point-something million. And you have 15 MEPs, is that?
Or
70 or something?
Something like that. I don't remember exactly.
It's not too important, but it's for sure we would have probably the same amount of MEPs.
I guess,
And we have briefly touched upon competitiveness, climate change, migration. All these issues are also very important for Norway, and I can imagine that we see eye to eye on a lot of the same issues as well.
That's also why I said it means Norway, because I think for as an alliance partner for Denmark, as in Denmark and Norway, we share a long history, and we are geographically in the same part of Europe, and many of the issues you mentioned, some of them we think the same thing. So we would be with you being member, we would be a bigger counterweight to some of the other ways to look at society in the European Union. And I think also how you look at society in countries like Denmark and Norway, small country, open economies, and so on, is quite different from other countries like France and Spain, where you maybe are looking at things more centralized, more controlled, more closed economies. You can do that because you're bigger countries. So I think the whole way of how you conceive a European cooperation, probably Denmark and Norway together with Sweden and Netherlands and other, maybe also some other countries, we look at it in a different way. And after the UK left the European Union, I think this way of looking at society is coming in minority now compared to other ways. So for that reason, we miss countries who have the same point of view as us.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to hear. If I was running a tabloid, I would probably have like the headline saying Lars from Denmark says he misses us in the EU. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure I would have plenty more interesting questions to ask, and maybe it's better we have a follow-up talk when the Danish presidency ends, so I can learn then.
I'll be happy to do that. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.